Hi there, everybody. Anna Bass here. I have come here today to talk to you about the ins and outs of the digestive system. Um, you may be asking yourself, why would a massage therapist be talking about digestive health? And it just so happens that in addition to being a licensed massage therapist, I am also a certified holistic health coach. If you don't know anything about my background, I actually worked in the restaurant industry for 28 years. I am a trained chef, went to Johnson & Wales University. And my restaurant claim to fame is that I worked in the nation's first certified organic restaurant. So I've been a health foodie for a very, very, very long time. I had personal reasons for being very interested in knowing and understanding everything that there was to know about the digestive system because I was having stomach issues. But where it comes into application today is that any client that I touch has to fill out an online intake form, and where they get asked a variety of questions. And if you've ever come in to see me, you know that intake, before I even put my hands on you is fairly thorough. It's very important to know what's going on with your body, and creating a plan of care, even with regard to massage, before we ever put hands on our clients. So many of my clients have expressed, their struggles with digestive health. And I've gone over this information that I'm about to share with you now with my clients numerous times. But when you're naked and laying on a table and you're trying to relax and get some body work, it's a lot of information to kind of digest in that setting. So a lot of my clients have asked me to put this out into a more user-friendly format. So that's what I'm trying to do here today. Okay. So when we're talking about the digestive system, there's the system itself, and then there is what you put through the system. And a problem could be with one or the other or both. Okay. So the system itself, we're talking opening to opening. Okay. If you get my drift here, everything that's involved from the entry point to the exit point. And so there could be a problem there, but there also could be a problem with the foods and things like that, the choices that you're making with what you're eating, or combination thereof. Okay. So I had thought about making 2 separate videos, and I decided I would try to jam it all into one. So anyway, digestion first begins in the mouth. When you are chewing your food, your mouth releases an enzyme called amylase. And the purpose for this amylase secretion in the mouth is to break down carbohydrates. Okay. If you're chewing really fast and you're eating in a hurry, and if you do not chew your food appropriately, undigested food or unchewed food is going to leave the mouth, head down the esophagus, and go into the stomach. Okay. There are no teeth past your mouth. So it's really important to break down your food in the mouth. Okay. And allow it to be in the mouth long enough for the amylase to actually do its work. So remember, amylase is for carbohydrate digestion and breakdown. Okay. So then your food travels down the esophagus and goes into the stomach. In your stomach, it churns the food up just a little bit, and it also then introduces hydrochloric acid into the mix. Okay. Hydrochloric acid in your stomach is designed to break down proteins. Okay. So if you're keeping track and doing math, amylase breaks down carbohydrates in the mouth. Hydrochloric acid in the stomach breaks down proteins in the stomach. So it takes two separate things to break down your food. Most often people are ingesting carbs and proteins in the same meal in the same setting, okay? If you do not chew your food appropriately, and if you have low hydrochloric acid levels in your stomach, what happens is that you get undigested food going into the intestine, and this causes a problem. As I've already said, it takes two separate things to digest these two components. So when that food goes into the intestine undigested, it actually putrefies, it rots. And that's what causes gas, bloating, and things of that sort. Okay. So, the first line of defense, the first place of action that you can take is, again, chewing your food. If you don't know, my youngest son has autism. He was diagnosed at age 6 with Asperger's. And this kid did not chew his food up at all. And I only know that because when he would throw up, I would always see identifiable things in his vomit. Also, I could see that pretty clear evidence in his bowels that he wasn't chewing. So we used to actually play a game where we would take an equal sized bite of food, put it in our mouth, and try to see who could chew the longest. So in this particular instance, who has the higher number would win. You ultimately really want to chew your food to the point that there's almost nothing left to actually swallow. And it does take a little bit of time and practice in order to do this, but this is the first line of defense that you can make, is what you do here in your mouth, okay? Moving down to the stomach and the hydrochloric acid situation, okay? So as we age, our body makes less hydrochloric acid. And then if you add other variables into the mix, say like you're on a lot of prescription medicine and things of that sort, or if you've led an unhealthy lifestyle, again, these are things that are going to contribute to less hydrochloric acid production. If you take something like an acid blocker, okay, that's also going to reduce the hydrochloric acid level in your stomach. So, typically when you're thinking of taking some type of an acid blocker, that's, going to prevent like acid reflux, heartburn, indigestion, and things of that sort. So that's going from the stomach up. But the problem with those is that if then the proteins don't get broken down adequately in the stomach, then you're going to wind up with from that point on to the other opening, problem, okay? Because you really need the proteins broken down in the appropriate place in the stomach, okay? Years ago, I was introduced to the concept of drinking raw organic celery juice on an empty stomach to improve the hydrochloric acid level in your stomach. You would want to drink 16 ounces of organic celery juice on an empty stomach, preferably, first thing in the morning if you're able to do it. This is celery juice. It is not celery smoothie. So you do need a specific device in order to do it. As a family, we did this for months. I would say we were going through so much celery that I actually went into Tampa, into the wholesale grocer, and was buying, cases of organic celery and, storing it in a cooler because we were going through a lot of celery. If you don't like the flavor of the organic celery juice, then you could cut it with a little bit of organic cucumber or an organic apple, okay? But again, this is something that you want to be doing preferably on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, all right? So then you have your bowels, okay? Small intestine, large intestine. So a lot of, again, everything that happens above that area is important to make sure that you have success in the lower portion of your abdomen or of the digestive system. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the gut-brain connection. Your gut houses a large portion of your immune system. If your gut is out of balance, chances are more than likely you're going to have some sort of neurological issue as well, something along the lines of depression. I would go so far as to say that almost any person I've ever come into contact with who has depression and is getting treated for depression also has some type of gastro imbalance. Your feel-good neurotransmitters are manufactured in the gut, like serotonin and dopamine. B12 is manufactured in the gut. Okay, so you want to make sure that that system is healthy and it's functioning properly. All of your nutrients are, absorption occurs, through the intestinal area as well. And, this system is so vital because that's what keeps you fueled, not just with calories, but, nutrient dense calories. Okay, is what you want to be thinking about. All right. So some things that you could, often do with relation to healing the intestinal part, or at least keeping it functioning well. One of those things would be something like the addition of probiotics. There are typically more bacteria in your gut than there are cells in your body. And you would want a nice, healthy, diverse microbiome there. So, I recommend to people that they find a good probiotic, take it as directed. And then when they finish it, they move on to another one. Okay. Every single manufacturer of probiotics has different bacterial strains in different levels and amounts. So every time you switch it, you're introducing potentially a new bacterial strain into the ecosystem to create this healthy diversity. Okay. Another thing that keeps the colon really healthy is fiber. Okay. Increase in fiber production helps cholesterol levels and so forth and so on. It also is going to help, again, with that nutrient absorption. Okay. So if you're looking for a fiber supplement, the first thing I would advise you to be mindful of is if you're going to drink fiber, you must make sure you have adequate water intake, okay? Because otherwise, without the water and the hydration, you're going to wind up creating a fiber brick in your intestine. That's not going to help anybody, okay? So you must make sure and be diligent about keeping that water intake high. I do recommend powders over a pill, okay? If you've ever seen fiber supplement in like a powder format versus a pill, it's like, how did they compress it all down into a pill? I just don't think it just doesn't give you the same effect. But you do want to look for a fiber supplement that has both soluble fiber as well as insoluble fiber. Okay. So soluble fiber, what that does is it gives your stool some bulk and it gives the musculature of your intestines something to work with. So with peristalsis, with the muscles of the intestine kind of contracting, that's how the stool gets moved through that system. So the soluble fiber gives it something to kind of grab hold of. Okay. The insoluble part of the fiber actually acts as a scrub brush. So as that stool is making its way down through the intestine, it is actually scrubbing the lining of the intestine, keeping it nice and clean. There again, this is going to help with greater nutrient absorption. All right. I think that pretty much covers the system in and of itself. So just to recap, some things that you can do to help yourself. First, make sure that you are really, really, really chewing your food. Then if you want to make sure that food is being digested appropriately in your stomach, try maybe some organic celery juice. Maybe think about adding in a probiotic and or fiber to the system. Okay. Supplement wise, for the digestive system, in addition to say probiotics or the fiber, my two other favorites, if you will, the first one would be activated charcoal. You can buy it in supplement format in most grocery stores. Charcoal is great for any digestive issue: gas, bloating, indigestion, heartburn, constipation, diarrhea, stomach bug, food poisoning. Okay. It does not have any symptom per se, other or side effect other than the fact that it is black as black can be. So it will turn your bowel movements very black or very dark. Okay. That's the only side effect that I know of, other than making you feel better. The other thing is, so charcoal is a detoxifier. Okay. And anything that you've got in your system, it just kind of, it absorbs all of it so that your body then can then eliminate it. And so that whatever it is not getting reabsorbed back into your body. All right. The caveat or the catch, if you will, with taking activated charcoal is that you need a 2-hour window on either side of taking it if you take other supplements or medication, because the charcoal will actually absorb that. And then your body doesn't benefit from the supplement or the medication. Okay. So if you take meds at 8 o'clock in the morning, you can't take charcoal until 10 o'clock in the morning. Or if you get up first thing in the morning at 8 and you take charcoal, you can't take your meds until 10. Okay. So you need that 2-hour window on either side. Now, while I'm a huge fan of charcoal, charcoal doesn't fix anything. Okay. All it does is mitigate symptoms. Right. So that's important to know. Ideally, you want to find out what's causing the problem and correct the problem. Okay. Which brings us to, have you ever thought about what you're actually putting through the system itself? All right. Now, here, this kind of piggybacks, how I started the video here. I said I used to be a chef, and I said that I used to have, my own stomach issues, and I worked in an organic restaurant. Quite a while ago, everything that I ate was organic. Okay. And then in 2010, I got diagnosed with a specific illness. And as part of that illness, my doctor recommended that I go on a gluten and sugar-free diet. So the cocky, arrogant chef in me was like, okay, no problem. I can pull this off. Well, I can tell you, back in 2010, there wasn't nearly as much commercial product that was gluten-free or sugar-free. And it was a truly humbling experience at the time when I was making this integration, even for me, considering the fact that I'm a chef. I've never thrown away so many food disasters, okay? But I was dedicated to following these instructions because I truly was sick of being sick, okay? I was not going to cheat on my diet. So up until this little experiment, if you will, I always thought that if you were having a problem with the food, it would manifest as some kind of food type related symptom. Again, the gas, the bloating, the indigestion, the heartburn, the constipation, the diarrhea. Had all of those, okay? But I also had other issues, okay? Widespread bone and joint pain. My mood swings were pretty erratic. Brain fog, things of that sort, things that I didn't necessarily connect to what I was eating. And so oddly enough, 2 weeks into my gluten and sugar-free diet, about 80% of those other symptoms just magically went away. That was actually the turning point for me. It was the thing that made me want to become a health coach in the first place. Because if I didn't know, now bear in mind, when I worked in restaurants, I worked anywhere from 80 to 100 hours a week. I was fixated and lived. Everything I did was all about food and healthy food. And if I didn't know that I was putting something unhealthy into my system that didn't work for me, there had to be other people out there who were just as lost and just as confused, thinking they're doing all the right things for themselves and coming up short. They were still sick. Okay. So I went back to school, became a certified holistic health coach. The rest they say is history. So there are 6 foods that are known to be the most pro-inflammatory. They're the foods, in other words, they're the foods that if you're going to have inflammation, they're going to cause it. I will say it doesn't matter whether the food is organic or not. It doesn't matter how clean the source of the food is. If your body does not like it, you're going to have a problem. Okay. So those 6 foods would be gluten, sugar, corn, soy, dairy, and eggs. Okay. 6 foods. So when I talk to people about trying to figure out if a food they're eating is not working for them, the idea of doing some sort of elimination diet gets brought up. Okay. There are multiple ways that you can do an elimination diet. You could, you could take out all of them all at once. And if you have, some quality of life change, you're going to know one of those foods is causing you a problem, but you're not going to know which one. Okay. So it's helpful to actually only do them one at a time. If you're, think about it, moms all know when we're introducing our babies to food, we only introduce one food at a time, because if that baby's going to have some type of an allergic reaction to it, we need to know what that food is. Okay. So it's, one new food every 3 or 4 days. Okay. So it's that kind of mentality. So I would say, from that list of 6, pick one of those foods, and you want to completely and totally 100% eliminate it from your diet. Okay. This does mean that you're going to have to, do a little bit of planning. You're going to have to read some food labels if you're buying anything that's processed, and go from there. Okay. You don't necessarily have to go to the extent of necessarily keeping a food diary or a food journal. I mean, you can if you want to go that extra step, but it is important to be mindful to pay attention to actually how you're feeling while you've taken that food out. Okay. And this is where I give the pregnancy analogy. Okay. So you can only be pregnant or not pregnant. It is absolutely impossible to be a little pregnant. All right. Same thing with gluten. You're either gluten-free or you're not. You're either sugar-free or you're not. Okay. So we can't be just a little bit when you're doing this experiment. And I will also say here at this juncture, if you have a family and kids, this, from my health coaching days, I've seen how difficult it can be if one person in the family is trying to sort this out and figure it out for themselves, and the rest of the family isn't in compliance. They don't want to do anything. I would tell you to be creative if you can. If you've got kids, just tell them that you're conducting a science experiment. Try to spin it in such a way that they get excited about it. Each one of my family members has gone through this at various ages and emotional levels. And so obviously I've had to adapt the spin based on their age, education, and so forth and so on. But you may find that in doing this, one family may have a problem with one food, whereas another family member has a problem with a different food. Okay. That's actually something that happened in my house. But it's much easier to manage if the whole family is doing it all at once than it is if you're eating one way and you're having to feed the family the rest of the way. Okay. I used to tell my kids all the time, it's like, hey, I don't run a restaurant at home. You're eating what I eat. Take it or leave it. Okay. So, anyhow, so you want to pick one of those foods and completely take it out of your diet for 2 full weeks. Okay. Now, at the end of that 2-week time frame, if you've had a major, profound quality of life change, don't add that food back in. Okay. You've already figured out that food does not work for you. Okay. But if you don't notice anything different to speak of, then go ahead and add the food back in. Kind of pay attention the first couple of days, see how your body feels when you reintroduce the food. Okay. But you kind of want to go back to a regular diet for about a week. Okay. So here we are. We're now 3 weeks in, 2 weeks of that food elimination and 1 week going back to a normal diet. That is, unless that food caused you a severe problem. So then you pick the next item on the list and you repeat the process. You completely take that food out for 2 weeks. and then add it back in for a week again, unless you've had a profound, major quality of life change. When I took gluten and sugar out of my diet, it equated to the fountain of youth for me. Okay. I can't even begin to tell you how huge of a difference it made for me. So it does take a little bit of time to go through all of this. But at the end of it, you're going to have a really good user manual for what works for you. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit. So, gluten comes from wheat. Okay. There's a couple of things with that. So suppose you take gluten out of your diet and you have this significant change. You really actually probably want to, make an appointment with your gastro doctor and get tested for celiac disease. Celiac disease has some different peculiarities or needs. Somebody who has celiac disease not only has to be very careful about what they're eating that might have gluten in it, they even have to, take into consideration, say, personal care products, lotions, shampoos, and things, because believe it or not, that stuff has a lot of gluten in it. And so a person with celiac disease is going to potentially be actually impacted by stuff that's going on their skin in addition to what they're eating. There's a genetic component to it. If you have celiac disease and you've had all kinds of health issues and struggles and so forth and so on, there's a likelihood that your children may have that as well. So that's really, really, really good information to have. Okay. And there again, if you're putting your family through this, don't be surprised if certain foods affect one, but don't affect the other and vice versa. I was fine. I took gluten and sugar out, but when I took dairy out, while that didn't have any, major effect on me one way or the other, for one of my children, it made a huge difference. Okay. So he had problems with dairy, whereas I didn't. All right. Now, years ago, when I was doing my, predominantly it was before becoming a massage therapist, I used to do something called ALCAT testing. And it's a blood test that they do. And you can pay different rates for ALCAT testing, depending upon how many foods you wanted to be tested against. And then, after you submit it, you get a result, and it'll have foods listed as, they're color coded. Green means you're okay with that food. Yellow means it's a slight problem for you. And red foods were the ones that you would completely avoid. Okay. And the more you paid, the more foods it tested you against. And at first I thought this was a really great idea. Okay. Because it was very specific. The thing that I learned was that if your system is unhealthy, okay, from going back to what we first started talking about, if the system's unhealthy, you could take that test every single day and get a different result. Okay. So in all good consciousness, I couldn't continue offering ALCAT testing because I didn't think it really, truly gave a person all the information that they needed to know how to manage their body, to give them the user manual for them. Now, so the thing, there's allergies to food as well. Celiac disease and an allergy means the only remedy for that is completely avoiding it. An intolerance to a food, okay? That's where consumption of that food, your body doesn't like it, and it's going to keep this, what's the word I'm drawing a blank for? This inflammation system kind of regurgitating. It's always going to keep you inflamed. That doesn't necessarily have to be a permanent elimination. Okay. So suppose you're doing all of this stuff at the same time. All right. You're trying to be more mindful about the way that you're chewing your food. You're doing things to increase the hydrochloric acid production in your stomach. Okay. You're taking some probiotics in your fiber. You're actually trying to heal the system itself. And then you will remove the offensive food. Okay. Now, chances are, if you've got a stomach issue, unless it's food poisoning, it's not something that came on immediately. Okay. This is overtime abuse and wear and tear on the system. And it takes a while to heal it up. It's not overnight. It takes a while to get well. But once you keep applying these steps to kind of heal the system, then you may actually be able to reintroduce that food that was bothering you at a later date and time. So don't feel like it's a permanent elimination necessarily if you find that that food just doesn't work for you right now. Okay. Let's see. I'm not sure if I mentioned slippery elm. That's one of the only other supplements that I really like for all things digestive. Okay, so that's an additional supplement to take into consideration. So to recap, if you find that if you're struggling with how to do the elimination diet or how to eat dairy free, Google obviously is a great place for resources and recipes and things. Say when you're, if you pick gluten, just go to Google and type in gluten-free dinner ideas or gluten-free recipes for dinner or gluten-free breakfast. Same thing with dairy, dairy-free breakfast recipes, dairy-free dinner recipes. So that can help you, get started for that 2-week time frame. The other thing, even as I said, being a chef, when I had to go on a restricted diet, even for me, it was pretty difficult to initially manage. But, once I got over that little bit of a learning curve, it was easy. Okay. That I found out what brands of foods that I could use, that I liked and, that tasted good. And then, a source of recipes to use. And so it was just the initial beginning stages of it that were difficult. Okay. All right. So to recap, chew your food. Maybe try some celery juice to make sure that the digestive juices in your stomach are flowing. Probiotics. There's also prebiotics, fiber. Okay. Adequate hydration. And then the list of those 6 foods again would be gluten, sugar, dairy, corn, soy, and eggs. Okay. Now, hope you got a lot of information about all of that. And if you have any questions or anything like that, you can always reach out to me. My business cell phone number is 412-328-4540. You can find me at annabasslmt.com. I'm here in Riverview, Florida. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the information and take care. Bye.